So welcome to Conversations with Melissa. I want to say a little bit about RenaFi, our host. Thank you so much, RenaFi. At RenaFi, we teach about the underlying drivers of our behavior. That knowledge leads to better decisions, and better decisions lead to an improved quality of life. So without further ado, my guest today is Coach Rudy Rodriguez. So Coach Rudy is in the expert category. He has been a frequent speaker at the International ADHD Conference. He also has spoken at the ADHD Women's Palooza and for, I think, both Chad and Ada. So we are in the company of an expert.
We all are subject to impulsivity. You know, we say something, we do something before we think about it, and oops, it's out there, and it doesn't always suit well for us. But the other thing is by the way, we may, because we lack hindsight also, we may be late or be angry, but the problem is we're not always aware of how often we're angry. That's a real deficit for us. So bringing awareness to that may help us to address that rather than a single one-on resolution. Maybe we can create a way of being that has more managed executive function, working memory, or emotional regulation, right? What I say about mindfulness is that we can't change what we're not aware of. So it's important to bring mindfulness and awareness so then we have foresight. We have what I call red zones. We can see things in advance and make adjustments to our behavior or our thoughts, our thinking as well beforehand. So that's why I think about the mindfulness, bringing mindfulness to everything we do. It's not being on the cushion like meditation. Mindfulness is bringing awareness into every moment of the day. When you're washing dishes or when you're having conversations with people, right? So,
you know, when you're saying about foresight, I nannied my way through college, and I was at something where there were kids and a pool and night, and kids were kind of getting full of beans and running around. And you could, if you're an adult, you're like, oh, well, we're about 3 or 4 minutes from somebody falling, somebody getting hurt, and a big meltdown. Yeah. So that's what I feel like you're telling us is, oh, what if you had that insight on yourself?
Right. Yeah. What if we could be aware of a situation before it erupts? And let's say that you walk into a room with some people and you see someone that is likely to trigger you. So you bring awareness to that and make adjustments beforehand, before you step into what I call the red zone. So in the red zone, let me explain that very quickly. I learned the term, basically I'm told it's about football. So in football, what happens is you have possession of the ball, you're going downfield. You get down to the 20-yard line. So that area between the 20-yard line and the goal is the red zone. So you don't want to fumble, you don't want to lose the ball, you don't want to make a mistake. So you want to make adjustments here in front of the red zone. And then if you end up in the red zone, then you have maybe a different option to do. So being aware of things in advance and knowing, maybe even identifying and listing what your red zones are. Are there when in a conversation? Are there maybe when you're driving? Are there, what are the situations where you tend to over and over again, put your foot in the mouth? So those are the red zones. So that's bringing some awareness and hindsight in advance, and we can make adjustments. Melissa?
Wow, that's terrific. Okay, so sometimes we might not recognize the pattern, right? But you're asking for us to maybe look at something that occurred recently, right? Where we could dissect it a little bit and then apply that. Is that what I'm hearing? Yeah.
Yes. One of my other strategies I have, it's a little outdated, but I call it roll the tape back. So there's no reel to reel any longer. But basically what happens is that we do something or say something and we cross into this impulsivity or something. So now we're way out here, but we often don't notice it till way out here. And then we just blow it off because, well, I messed up over here. But if we could stop, pause, and go one step at a time back. What did you notice? What did you not see? What were you feeling? And do this so that from now on, you might be able to catch it earlier on and maybe even prevent that. So again, bringing awareness to that and utilizing the opportunities that we have where we make mistakes, but turn them into learning opportunities.
Okay, I'm on board for this. This sounds extra fun, right?
Okay.
It sounds a little bit difficult in this beginning part, right? A little bit, oh, I have to kind of be in an uncomfortable place, right? But what you're going to get on the other end of it is more freedom, right? More ability to be in the moment. That's what I'm hearing you tell me. Yeah.
Right. You have the ability to kind of determine, as I said, who you get to be, rather than end up being someone or in some emotional state that you didn't want to, didn't intend to, but here you are.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we can kind of point at some of these things, like they have names and kind of colloquial names, like we've heard about bridezillas, right? You're planning your big wedding,
Right,
you're
right.
in the middle of it, you've got some cognitive load, and then it's like, it's got to be perfect, right? You're all in this perfection zone.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you're not the bride you wanted to be, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So that's a great introduction, actually, perfection, because what I'm going to talk about today, the primary topic, is what I call attachment to outcome. Now, attachment to outcome is defined as an emotionally backed demand. So emotionally, I'm attached to the outcome. I've already decided maybe what perfect is or how I expect something to happen. And so it's the attachment that fuels the emotions that we have. So basically what we say is the greater the attachment, then the greater the upset. However, the lower the upset, the lower the attachment, the lower the upset. So we want to learn to modulate things so that they work for us and the people around us.
This is very interesting. It's taking something out of this kind of invisible, it has mechanisms that are not seen place and pulling them into the light. That's what I'm hearing you say, especially around expectations. And I guess a wedding is a really very good example, because there are people who have their fantasy, their ideal wedding. And I did not have that. And I found I didn't get married until 40, but it was really fortunate because I had a lot more flexibility around, everything from the dress to the cake. I didn't have this giant fantasy of how it would be, or that I'm gonna fit in my mother's dress, or any of those other expectations. But in life, we have a lot of places where we don't express them expectations. We have them, but we're maybe not 100% aware of them until they're not met, right? And then we might maybe have a little tantrum about it.
Exactly.
Right.
And again, once you begin to identify these are probably situations and emotional reactions that you have over and over again. But again, in the moment, we may see this or not, but we don't see how often that happens. And that's a major part of bringing awareness to that and learning to manage that better. So what we do in this is that I'm going to ask everyone, and Melissa and I are going to have a demonstration, but I'm going to ask everyone to think about maybe 2 or 3 things that really make you angry. Now, this is like big anger. This is like very strong attachment. This is when you feel you have an expectation and it's rigid. There isn't any flexibility. This is the way it should be. This is what I want. This is the way it's going to be. So think about maybe 2 or 3 things, incidents or experiences where you have high attachment. Okay. Now we're thinking about a vertical line, a continuum from 1 at the bottom, the least level of emotion, and 10, the highest level of emotion. So think about those things in the upper end that really tend to get you. And maybe it's possibly hurtful for other people around as well. So take a moment to do that. Now, what I'm going to ask you to do, if you've done this little exercise, you got 2 to 3 maybe attachments. I want you to now put a value next to those between 1 and 10. So 10 again is high, 1 is going to be low, So when you think about these things, at what level are you attached? At what level do you react with your emotions? And so just take a moment to do that. Yeah. So what happens is that the people that tend to get angry the most or triggered, generally on the scale of 1 to 10, have too many 8, 9s, and 10. We're loaded for bear. Okay.
Okay.
We're just waiting to ignite. So what we want to do is bring some of these down. There's some things that may still get you angry up here, but let's bring some of these down. So I don't know how many of you had something between 8, 9, and 10. Those are generally the trigger areas. And we'd like to get it down to 7, 6, or below. So now that you've done that, this is where we tend to lose it. We explode and then we maybe not rational or something. So now that you've got these 2 or 3 things that are maybe 7, 8, 9, and 10, now I want you to think about for a moment about what a real life attachment would be, a real number 10. And it might have to do with health, safety, might have to do with your children, might have to do with something major. If that then were a real 10, what I'd like you to do now is look at those 2 or 3 items you had, and based if this is a 10, look at those other 3 and revalue them now. They had been a 7, 8, 9, or 10.
Right.
So if we've defined that somebody threatened your children as a real 10, then where does that put the other items that you had up there? And think about that. And maybe you could post a couple of new numbers, or maybe a number and a slash and what that was and what it is now. So if you've done this now I want you to look at the items, and maybe there are 7 and below now. I want you to look at least one of them. And I want you to think now what kind of thoughts you have as a 7, as opposed to where it was higher level. And close your eyes and then feel that. Feel that experience at that new level. Let's say now it's a 4 or a 5. So feel it now as a 4 and a 5. So this is kind of rehearsal skills. Now you have the ability to know the next time, this is not really an 8 or 9, it's really a 4 or 5.